Hey, good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome for joining today's webinar, Getting Started with Generative Design using Fusion 360. And today, Kirti Malavuru has joined us. He works as a senior tech specialist for manufacturing solutions at Autodesk India. So, welcome, Kirti. Thank you so much for taking time and being here with us.
Hey, thanks, Varun. Let me just share my screen real quick. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. We really appreciate you guys taking your time and joining this session. I hope it will be useful to you and it can help you in your you know upskilling your skills and talent as well. So with this, I'll start my session. My name is Kirti Malavuru. I'm the technical specialist at Autodesk, looking after the manufacturing set of solutions for that industry. Um, so before we start, I'll just set the agenda for today. So my session is going to basically cover the introduction to generative design. We will go through a couple of examples, certain customer stories, and certain summary and resources for you to get started. Yeah. So before I start, I would like to set certain context right for what this entire session is all about and why are we now looking at this technology as a means of a major source of innovation and platform. So I'm from the industry. I've been working in the industry from last 15 years, and I've seen the different shifts in the industry that has taken place. But one thing that we see uh, that is kind of changing in the last couple of years is a lot of new trends and new challenges that are emerging. Some of these are, we are seeing newer means of production, newer means of manufacturing technologies, increased globalization. So with increased globalization, you have a very, very heavy competition all across. We are seeing a reduced time to market. People want to be the fast movers so that they can enable their brand. And globalization, you want to reduce cost, but you don't want to compromise on your overall performance, etc., etc. Now, let's look at certain facts, why this is happening and why it will happen more so in the future. So what we are seeing is by 2050, as per one study, by 2050, there will be around 10 billion people on the planet. And even today, what we are seeing as a result of that is more and more people are shifting from their economic strata. That means more and more people are entering into the middle class segment. So what happens with that is now they have the economic freedom. So they now have a major stake in the buying power of goods. So with that, what happens is more people moving into the middle class, more and more people will start shifting towards cities, or newer cities has to be planned, smart cities has to be planned, and everything. With this shift, what happens is there is an inevitability that you need to create more of everything. It could be more of buildings, more of roads, more of infrastructure, more of vehicles, more of transportation, more of resources, everything. But at the same time, the sad truth, what we also know is there is a less of everything. There is less of infrastructure, there is less of natural resources, there is less of talent, skilled labor, resources, etc. So that is where we, either as an individual or an organization, have the perfect opportunity to be better and do better for the planet. But at the same time, this looks a lot of wishful thinking, because as I said, I come from the industry background. I know that there are certain barriers to this. You might be very, very innovative, but there are certain industry barriers to it. And some of the barriers that we see day in and day out is in terms of time. We are basically restricted by time. So we don't have time at our behest to do a lot of exploration of the design. At the same time, we are limited by technology. If my entire focus on the innovation leads to a huge increase in the cost in infrastructure and software, basically that is not going to fly out. So I'm also limited by technology. Again, another interesting aspect is there is a dearth of talent pool that is required for any kind of expertise on the design. Similarly, what we see, and it's a hard truth, that there is a huge disconnect between the design and manufacturing in an organization or anywhere. So basically, the design is highly driven by the manufacturing constraints, or your means of manufacturing is still being enabled with the old age way of design thinking. So that perfect balance between design and manufacturing is still lacking. Any changes late in the system is cost prohibitive. You just cannot do that. And you always have to find the right balance between your performance and cost. Just because you can ideate, you can innovate, doesn't mean that it will be feasible for you to produce and manufacture. But before that, you need to find that right balance between the performance and your cost, so that you are designing which is feasible for you to produce. So now let's take a look at currently how my design process is done. So basically, in the current scenario, basically the traditional means of design is basically you have a bunch of concepts. You then go ahead and evaluate the feasibility of that, check for its manufacturability, you validate that design and produce. And I'm sure people would agree on this point. And this constitutes my overall time to market, which has an iteration phase and as a production phase. And this is very, very limited in its capacity to explore multiple things. Because as I said again, this is the most critical point, that is time to market. So now, what if there is a way to shrink that overall time to market for you, where you can actually work with pre-validated concepts? And when I say pre-validated, I'm stressing on the word pre-validated concepts for design, for function, and for manufacturability, and then it directly goes into the production. Imagine the amount of time that you can save if you are able to create multiple concepts. And when I say multiples, it could go into hundreds and thousands for a single problem statement, which are pre-validated for all your strength needs, your material needs, your fabrication needs, your functionality needs, etc., etc. That is where I would like to introduce Autodesk Generative Design, which is a design exploration technology which can help you to create multiple design outcomes for a single problem statement, keeping in mind certain manufacturing constraints like form. The design should have a form or a shape. The design should be able to perform certain functionality, and it should be able to be fabricated or produced. So what we are proposing is a generative design approach, where, as I said earlier, Your concepts are pre-validated to check for strength and manufacturability, and it can directly then be taken into production, thus shrinking your overall time to market as against your traditional approach. We will discuss how it can be done in the later part of it. Just let this feeling sink in with you. Now, for a consumer, or sorry, for a user or for an organization, why this is important? Because now technology can work with you hand in hand. Okay, again, I'm repeating that point. Technology is working with you hand in hand. It is not. It is no more an input-output method that you say, okay, create this like this, give dimensions, it will create. No, you are basically working along with the technology to come up with newer designs, thus enabling that you have superior performance. It can lead to much larger innovation capacity within your organization or your company or your startup. And also it can enable you to basically reduce cost by incorporating certain sustainability platforms like lightweighting, material reduction, material wastage, etc., etc. At the same time, the most important part here is it takes fraction of the time that is required to do this level of R&D on a design. And generative design, Autodesk generative design does that in a very, very, very limited amount of time, thus giving you more power in terms of working on the design itself. So what generative design can help you? It can help you, as I said earlier, to generate multiple outcomes for a single problem statement, which are CAD ready or almost CAD ready outcomes, which can then be directly taken into CAD, do some changes, take it into production, or in some of the cases, you can directly take that data into production stream. At the same time, not limiting it. Okay, I repeat, not limiting it to any one type of manufacturing methods. So Autodesk generative design basically helps you to address various different types of production methods, right from the current trend, that is your additive manufacturing or your 3D printing, as well as your conventional way of manufacturing, like your die casting. It could be your milling operations, either 3-axis, 5-axis, even 2.5-axis, or it could be your cutting operation like a 2-axis cutting. And we are adding more and more production methodologies into the process. At the same time, it doesn't stop here. Innovation is usually challenged at one particular stage, that is, how do I derive the cost versus performance? What are the trade-offs between the performance versus the cost that is required to make or manufacture a component? So we have partnered with a costing solution provider called as A Priori, which basically helps you to give you the costing of that particular part for different materials, for different manufacturing methods, thus enabling you and giving you more information to do a much more advised or informed decision on your design. So if I look at the overall cost versus performance, so I can able to basically plot out a complete chart which helps me to provide the cost that is needed for me to produce the component using various different manufacturing methods. So that can help me to decide which is the best possible solution, which helps me to ensure that I am within budget, as well as it meets all my technical requirements, and at the same time ensures that there is a standard ROI that I can generate out of this component over a period of time. And what generative design does is, it is not limited to any industry. It is industry agnostic. It can be an auto industry or its supply chain system. It could be an aerospace industry. It could be somebody from the consumer industry, medical devices, high-tech devices, or industrial machinery. So basically, generative design is not limited by the different manufacturing industry you are working. It is basically limited by what you can think of. So let's get a bit more in depth about what generative design is all about. So as I have established earlier, so generative design is a design exploration technology which is manufacturing aware. A lot of people might, start getting confused. Oh, is it the same as topology optimization? No, because topology optimization is not manufacturing aware, whereas generative design is manufacturing aware. The design, the outcomes that it provides suits the sensibility of that particular manufacturing method. It could be either additive manufacturing or any of the conventional subtractive or other means of manufacturing. At the same time, I can check outcomes for multiple different materials, check for different manufacturing methods, check for different loading conditions or the constraints that it is being subjected. Now, the way it works, basically, that this is a very beautiful example of an amalgamation of human and machine interface. So as humans, we are very good at articulating a problem. We can derive or define a problem statement or a design intent. Coupled with intelligent algorithms, which is constrained by certain manufacturing know-hows, like, the design should have a form, it should have a function, it should be able to perform a function, as well as it should be able to be fabricated by any means. Added with unlimited cloud computing power can help you to extract hundreds or thousands of different design options for a single problem statement. That's the key word here. As a human, I am able to define my problem using certain technology parameters like algorithms and compute power. I am able to derive multiple different designs which conventionally I would not be able to do so because of my limited time, limited technology, and lot of other things that we discussed previously. I always like to give this example. Let's suppose, I'll just take my example itself. If suppose somebody poses me with a problem that, okay, you define or you design a chair, what I do is automatically in my mind I design a chair which has either 3 legs or 4 legs, because from my childhood I have been conditioned by design to see something as to see a chair which either has 3 legs or 4 legs. So that is called as design bias. So I already have a design bias in mind. But if the same problem is articulated into a system or a machine with inbuilt certain intelligent algorithms and the capacity to compute hundreds and thousands of different options on the cloud, it can come up with so many different shapes, ideas, and concepts which we might not be able to come up with. In the example that is shown in the screen, this is something or this is something that I could come up with, but I don't think I can ever come up with a shape like this. And if you want to see the real benefits here, you just do a 1:1 comparison of the weight as against its performance. Now, with costing added, you know where to draw the line and you can pick and choose the best possible design that meets all your considerations and constraints, either technical or financial part of it. So that is the beauty of generative design which can help me to explore so many different ideas in a very, very seamless manner. And the best for the last, this is done, in a very, very short period of time that you can't even, or I can't even imagine. Now, if I have to come up with a design like this, it could take maybe months or years, or I could not even come to a design like this. But a system with its unlimited cloud compute power can come up with a design like this in a very, very short period of time. So having said that, let's start looking at certain problem statements. So this was one of the first problems that we defined, and we collaborated with certain industries to see the feasibility of different manufacturing methods. So this is a GE engine bracket. Uh, you know, just like any other bracket, its functionality is to hold, is to suspend, is to take some loads or transfer certain loads to other components. Now let's articulate the problem. So what do I know about this bracket? So the problem definition is, they wanted to come up with a newer shape or the newer design of this bracket, which is considerably lesser in weight. This is somewhere around 3.2 kgs or something like that. They wanted to reduce it drastically by using different materials and even looking for different manufacturing methods. So they defined the materials. They said, we want to look at additive manufacturing as a platform and certain loading conditions. So now let's understand the bracket in itself. So what do we know about this bracket? So basically this bracket is part of a larger assembly. So this fits in a much bigger assembly. And this bracket is basically fixed by means of 4 bolting holes. And there is a clevis pin, which basically passes through these mounting holes. Right? I hope you are able to understand this. So the function is, this is basically bolted or constrained to by means of bolts, and there is a pin or a clevis pin which passes through this mounting holes. And this pin is basically subjected to various different loading conditions. It is pushing condition, pulling a load, or a pushing load, or it could be even a torsional load, depending upon where it is mounted. Now let's directly jump into the tool itself. I'm sure that in the last couple of increment webinars that you have been attending, you are now familiar with the interface of Fusion 360. So this is Fusion 360, and unlike its various different options, you have multiple different verticals that you can choose from. In this, I want to go to generative design, where I have this bracket with me. Now, in reality, I might not have this bracket, and I would only be having the problem statement. And the problem statement that we defined just now, it is basically bolted in 4 these locations. There is a pin that goes through this mounting holes. So as a first step, what do we know? That this is bolted at 4 locations. So this location is of paramount. This is very, very critical for me to start deciding on the shape of it. So I create something called as preserve region. I'll just hide this bracket for a second. So I create these cylindrical structures or bodies which represents the region which is critical for me to start defining the shape of the bracket. I hope it's understood. Okay. So in reality, as I said, I won't be having this bracket with me. So I will be defining, because this is going to be assembled into a larger assembly. I know that, there a hole needs to be added so that it gets fixed constraint, and a mounting hole needs to be added because there is a pin that is going to go. Now within this empty space, it has to start filling and creating the structure of the new design. But at the same time, you also need to ensure that I don't want unnecessary materials to be added, so that it becomes an hindrance during the assembly of that particular component or product. So what it means is, how this particular bracket will be fixed into the other part of the assembly. Basically, it will be tightened by means of a spanner, screwdriver, whatever is the tool that you are using. Now, but the software will not understand, and it can start creating materials here as well. So I need to create bodies which basically tells the software that these are obstacles, and don't create any materials wherever you see this red bodies or the ones which are highlighted in red. So what it means is that the software will not create any materials in this section, or in this section, so that there is a free movement of the tool to go ahead and fix the desired connections, whatever is required. I hope it is clear till this point. Now, what do I know is, let me just hide this obstacle geometry. What do I know is, these four are constrained. It is fully constrained because it is bolted. So I go ahead and start defining the constraint, just you do in any of the FEA tools that you use. And I select these four faces and I say, go ahead and fix it. It is fixed in all three axes, X, Y, and Z. So there is absolutely no moment. But if it is a pinned constraint or a frictionless constraint, you can go ahead and define that. Once this is done, what do I know? Let me just switch this on. There is a clevis pin that goes across this mounting hole, which is subjected to certain loading condition. So I will just define. So I need to go ahead and define my loading conditions. So I select the different loading conditions. I've already done that, so that we don't have to redo it here. And I have given an upward force of somewhere around 12,000 Newton or pound force, whatever it is. On top of it, I can go ahead and define multiple loading conditions, which basically translates to these different loading conditions that has been provided. So I have defined 4 different loading conditions. And if gravity plays a role in it, because it's a heavy material, you can go ahead and define the gravity and provide the direction in which the gravity is going to act upon it. So with this as my initial setup, what I have done is I have prepared the model, I have provided the constraints, I have defined the loading conditions. Next I need to do is start defining the criteria for it to be produced. So I will start defining the objectives of this particular problem statement. The objective they provided was, we need to minimize the mass with a factor of safety of around 2. Or in some cases, your objective could be, I need to increase stiffness. So at that time, there will be a compensation. Your mass might increase, but the overall stiffness of that particular body will be increased. So you can pick and choose whichever you want. You can limit your factor of safety. On top of it, if you want to pre-validate it for the first mode frequency, you can go ahead and define the frequency, and it will also do a vibrational study to check for your modal frequencies. And if you want to limit the displacement, because there are loads that are being subjected here, that I want to consider only those design options which are well within these range, whatever it is, 1 meter, 2 meter, 5 meters, you can go ahead and define that as well. The next thing that I need, most critical important part, is defining what type of manufacturing method that I'm going to use here. So if you are looking for a large scale volume production, you can go ahead and define your production piece. And there are various manufacturing methods that are available which you can use. Unrestricted is a type of manufacturing where it doesn't follow any kind of manufacturing method or principles. It just uses the biomimicry and starts defining the shape of it. Or if you are looking at additive manufacturing, you can go ahead and define that. If you know the overhang angle and the minimum thickness, you can define that. As I said earlier, it is also used for different types of milling operations, be it 3 axis, be it 5 axis, or even 2.5 axis. At the same time, it is not just defining the operation, you can also define the tool specs as well. So you can define the directions, the diameters, what should be the head diameter and other things, so that you are basically using the same tool specs which is then going to be used in the factory floor. If you are looking at a cutting operation like a sheet metal, you can go ahead and define your cutting operation, or a much more traditional means where you are looking at a very large scale volume production. You can even look at die casting as an option. You can provide the draft angle and the thickness so as to incorporate those constraints into your design. So in this case, I'll just define unrestricted additive, and we will look at the results later. And the last part of it is defining the materials. The beauty of generative design is it doesn't iterate the process for a single material. At a single time or in a single run, I can basically analyze 10 different types of material, ranging from maybe plastics to metal to additive manufacturing metals like Inconel or titanium 6AI. Sorry. So in this case, I have used only 3. I have used stainless steel, titanium, and aluminium. On top of it, we have a huge library of materials for all the different metals, different types of materials. It could be for specifically additive manufacturing materials or even non-linear materials as well. So you can pick and choose different materials, and at a time you can go ahead and select 10 different materials. And lastly, you just have to go ahead and generate this. It's a very simple process. You go ahead and generate this. Once you generate, what it basically does is it uses the cloud compute and creates multiple different design options which can then be understood, and you can go ahead and post-mortem the results in detail for each and individual design concepts that it has generated. So in this case, for unrestricted and additive, it has basically created multiple different outcomes which follows certain manufacturing methods, follows the objectives that we have defined by in terms of mass, in terms of factor of safety, and in terms of displacement. And I can go ahead and start understanding each and individual design in detail. So there are various exploratory filters that are available which can help you to do those things in a very easy and a systematic manner. I can go ahead and use certain types of display functionalities or filtering mechanisms where it gives me a complete detail about that particular design, which manufacturing method, this is unrestricted, this is additive manufacturing, what is the mass. So 3 pound mass would be somewhere around I think 1.5 kg or something like that. So I can go ahead and see, okay, which is the one which follows within my criteria. It also has options of a scatter plot, where I can basically plot it across various different options. If I want to plot it across my mass versus material, so it gives me, as the mass increases, what are all the different options that you can go ahead and select. And finally, the most commonly used, that is a tabular function, which you can go ahead and start understanding. So now let's look at couple of these designs. Let's look at this particular design, which is made from an unrestricted one. So it has basically created a design which is very, very smooth in nature, and at the same time, it has it is well within the objective that I have mentioned. It is lesser than the original design, as well as it falls well within the factor of safety as well. Or I can look at some other option, which is of maybe additive manufacturing in the express orientation. So I can go ahead and have a much more deep dive of this particular design. On top of it, as I said, it does the pre-validation in terms of strength. So I can check where are my high stresses that are being formed, which can potentially lead to some kind of an issue. I see that high stresses are formed in somewhere this locations, which will not affect the overall performance of it. So if I were to go ahead and manufacture it using an additive manufacturing, this should be highly doable, and the overall stresses that it generates is next to negligible. I can even go ahead and compare this with an entirely different design. So I can do a 1:1 comparison, or 4 different comparisons in a single window, and understand how it behaves for different materials, for different structural conditions, and all those things can be studied in detail. And finally, once you have drilled down on the design that you are comfortable with, you can basically go ahead and maybe output a design which looks like this directly into Fusion. Now this is a CAD ready output. So either you can directly take it into the printer and print it, or because it is available as a CAD file, I can go ahead and maybe do some kind of an operations to do certain cleanup of the model and make it much more manufacturing ready. So I hope you guys were able to relate with this problem that we discussed. Let us look at a different problem altogether. So let's look at a different example. So this is an example of a shelf corner bracket. Now, what is the overall objective here? Basically, the wooden platform has to be able to hold certain load, which is fixed to the wall. So this is my problem definition. I don't know what the shape is. I know where it has to be bolted and what is the amount of load that this particular platform will be subjected to. So using this as my problem statement, I can now go ahead and apply the same logic that we applied for my previous example. I know that this is being fixed to the wall, and the wooden platform will be supported on this particular fixture. So I go ahead and define this. I go ahead and define the loading conditions. This is constrained to the wall. I define different materials in the same way that I had done for the previous one. I go ahead and define the manufacturing method. In this, I'm using unrestricted additive manufacturing as well as 2-axis cutting as my operation. So once this is done, I again go ahead and generate the designs. Once this is done, it basically throws me with multiple different design options which are manufacturing ready for me. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the outcome, because ultimately you are the guys who's going to select the design. But using additive manufacturing, I can go ahead and manufacture something like this in little to no time. Or if you want to go ahead and manufacture using a much more conventional way of design, like a 2-axis or 2.5 axis, I can go ahead and choose a design which is lightweight, which is aesthetically pleasing, and which is also strong enough to hold all the loads that it is being subjected to. So this is currently being manufactured either by, I think, by 2-axis cutting or 2.5 axis. So I can go ahead, I can check for the results, whether it is subjected to any kind of high stresses, and these are at bolt locations. I can either then, if this looks okay, I can directly take it into a printer by means of an STL file or any of the file formats which the printer agrees upon, or I can now go ahead and push out the model for further cleanup of the model, which can then be used as a production ready model as well. So this is the level of detail that you get with the outcome of that particular model. And with this, now if you want to do a deep dive into this particular design, I can go ahead and do it. So I hope you are able to understand the importance of generative design in your in your goal of achieving innovation. We will look at different industry examples as well. So now one customer. So till now what we have seen is basically brackets. But as I said, the use case of generative design is immense across different industries. So this is basically a industrial equipment provider. So they basically make this pick and place assembly, which is used to basically has a gripper, a modular structure, and certain vacuum pumps, and it picks and places in the assembly line. So let's start defining the problem here. The problem here is, I know that the pick and place has vacuum pumps, there are air channels, and there is a modular structure. Now, depending upon the weight of the modular structure, you need to basically go ahead and define your actuation system. So if the weight is heavy, basically you would have to choose a configuration, a higher configuration of your actuation system, thus leading to much more costly actuation system. But if you can have a much more lighter modular structure, you can actually go for a lighter actuation system. So they use this as the background. They know the different materials, the different loads. They define the preserve region, the obstacle region, everything they define. And they use generative design to come up with various different design concepts for various different manufacturing methods. So using additive manufacturing, they were able to come up with a shape like this. At the same time, they also checked, is there a way for me to have a single structure rather than having 3 different components? Can I have a single consolidated part which can help me to completely fulfill my technical needs? So they even ventured that. They were able to print it, test it, and all these things are test cases. They actually did this in their lab to ensure and finally pick and choose the one which gives them a better ROI through the life of that particular component. So they were able to print it. They even tested for a milling operation, how it will look like, what is the cycle time it takes, and whether it is feasible for me to manufacture it or not. They even tested for a casting operation, And finally, they even checked for 2.5 axis, which was finally their go-to manufacturing means, where they settled for a 2-axis milling, which helped them to greatly reduce their overall weight of the entire gripper assembly. At the same time, let's talk about a lot of people will be much more thrilled with this. So this is a super bike called as Lighting. Now, for them to increase the performance, they have to reduce the overall weight of their vehicle. And as more the lesser the weight, more is the drag, and you can increase the performance of the vehicle. So they basically identified the swing arm as one of the component which was the heaviest in their overall vehicle. So they used generative design as a platform and identify how the swing arm is basically connected to the overall vehicle. What are the different loading conditions that it is going to be subjected? How big how different manufacturing methods can be employed, and how it will help them to meet their objective for their overall achievement. Their basically objective was increase performance, increase drag, at the same time ensure that the factor of safety is as good as my previous one. And finally, they were able to come up with a shape which was a hybrid manufacturing, both additive and manufacturing, which is now in production. And they were able to drastically reduce the weight of their swing arm as opposed to their baseline or original swing arm. And if you look at the calculations here, they were able to achieve this without compromising on the factor of safety. So that's the beauty of generative design. Let's quickly look at a couple of customer stories as well, which are published and are available in our Autodesk portal. The first one is a very, very interesting one, that is from General Motors. Now, we work with General Motors in a very, very rigorous fashion, where they posed a challenge for us. And their challenge was, with their vision of going into the entire electrification of their vehicles, they had to drastically reduce the weight of the vehicle. So their challenge was, rather than us individually reducing the weight of each and every component, is there a way where I can basically combine multiple components or a subassembly into a single component? So their problem definition was, the outcome should be 40% lighter, 20% stronger. At the same time, it should be able to consolidate 8 components into one part. So one of the sub-assemblies that they basically identified was the seat belt bracket, which is basically hidden below the seat. It consists of 8 components. This is how it looked, and after using generative design, they were able to come up with a shape which basically amalgamated 8 components into a single component with 40% reduction in weight. At the same time, it was 20% stronger than their original model. And they used generative design as a means to explore thousands of different design options for various manufacturing means, for various different materials and loading conditions. And finally, they were able to come up with a shape which suits all their requirement and delivers on performance. Reducing this and finally replacing it with a shape like this. Such beautiful artwork. At the same time, our friends at Claudius Pizza, they are basically an industrial equipment manufacturer, to basically provide something called as clinkers, which is used in the process industry like cement processing industry, and subjected to very, very, very high thermal loads, high temperature. And their current problem definition was their individual clinkers were very, very heavy, and they wanted to drastically reduce the cost of their manufacturing and material. So that was their problem definition, and they used generative design at the background as a platform to come up with shapes which could be manufactured by means of conventional manufacturing methods. So with a weight which was close to 170 kgs, they were able to reduce it to 50 kgs. Imagine the impact that it can have on society and planet, and they were able to come up with a sustainable design at the same time using their conventional machines and manufacturing means. We work very closely with NASA. So for one of their landers, interplanetary landers, they were looking at a design which is considerably lightweight as compared to the previous ones. So they basically combined the structure of a spider and use generative design to biomimic that and get a shape which is drastically lighter in weight as compared to the original design. Or for that matter, Airbus. So this is basically a partition wall which separates the cabin and the crew. And if you have traveled, I'm sure that in the last 3 months nobody would have traveled and people would have forgotten how an aircraft looks, but people would have traveled, they would have seen that there is a partition wall which basically separates the two. Those are hard materials. And again, just like in any industry, lesser the weight of the vehicle, less is the carbon footprint, at the same time increase in performance of the vehicle. So they basically use generative design to come up with the shape for the partition wall, which is 45% flat reduction in weight as compared to the original design. So before I end my session, generative design provides you with limitless opportunities, and it's up to you how do you want to use it. It can be a tool for you to explore multiple designs. It can be a tool for you to explore impossible geometries. It could be a tool used to enhance your existing part or an assembly and making it much more optimum in design. Or it can also be used as a tool or a technology to basically combine multiple different moving components into a single stable rigid component. Again, as we discussed earlier, a lot of people get confused with topology optimization and generative. Topology optimization is a subset of generative, where in topology optimization you already have a shape and your goal is typically to reduce the weight from it, whereas in generative design, basis your design intent, a shape is generated which is manufacturing aware. That is the most critical point, which is manufacturing aware. So before I end, for people who already have Fusion 360 or they are using the trial version, there are a lot of summary and resources that are available which you can use to hone your skills and start using generative design. You can visit autodesk.com and explore through the generative design webpage. There are a lot of content, there are a lot of presentations, white papers that are available, along with a host of different case studies and success stories that we have published along with our customers, which shows how they have used generative design to meet their business goals and their business objectives. On top of it, there is a huge learning material that is available within Fusion 360 that can help you to get started on your generative design journey right from scratch and help you to complete your project step by step. With this, I end my session. I hope it was useful to you. We are always available. Do reach out to us if you need a much more dedicated discussion to happen. Do reach out to us. In the meantime, if you have any question, please post it on the chat panel. We will be more than happy to answer you. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Okay, so thank you so much for this session, Kirti. Tomorrow we have a session on CNC manufacturing using Fusion 360, and Krupal is going to demonstrate how simple and easy it is to use Fusion 360 CAM to create multi-axis toolpath. So once again, thank you everyone for joining today. Really appreciate your commitment towards this course. And thank you, Anand and Badri. They are with us. They are sharing their great experience in the Q&A. So have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.